You're listening to the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. In this episode, it is actually part 2 of what I started last week when I called it FATA, F-A-T-A, which is basically fear, anxiety, tension, and anger. And I talk in this episode about how to eliminate these things from your life. Keep listening.
Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you, because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here.
Okay, so fear, anxiety, tension, and anger. As I'd mentioned in the last episode, I got the idea for the episode in a conversation with my brother-in-law, the shaman. And he was talking to me about fear, anxiety, tension, and anger, and about health and wellness. And he was talking about what poison fear, anxiety, tension, and anger are. Now, for each episode, I generally kind of think ahead about, what I want to do, what I want to say, what my topic is going to be. And I had a topic already picked out, and then that hit me at the last minute because I talked to him on a Saturday night, and I was going to record the podcast the next day. I'm like, okay, here's the topic. So the second part of this, I wrestled with it a lot, thinking, how do I tackle such a big subject? I mean, I could spend episodes on each one of these 4 things, the fear, anxiety, tension, and anger. Anyway, what I did is I just tackled a bit of it, and I've spent a lot of time this week really just letting it, ruminating and letting it just kind of, float through my mind. And the reality is that all of these, for the most part, there might be one with an exception, but they come from one place, which is how I will wrap up this podcast. So, fear, anxiety, tension, and anger. People are walking around with variations of all of these in their lives. Some to a greater degree, some to a lesser degree. But think about that. How much fear do you have in your life, and what are you afraid about? How much anxiety, and what creates anxiety for you? How much tension, which a lot of us don't think about. And then, a big one, I think pretty much almost everyone can relate to, is the anger. Now, me being on the planet, obviously I'm human, and in human form and in the human body, you've also often heard me say that I'm a cosmic being. We all are. But these are all things that I've experienced in my own life and have contributed to my health and in ways that aren't positive at different times of my life and relationships and everything else. But they're poison. These are poisons, and I've watched them destroy people's desires and passions and dreams, and they really keep people in a mental prison. So as I'd mentioned these, think about your own life. Again, how much fear and anxiety and tension and anger. And have you ever really sat down to qualify, how much fear, of course you can't say, I get into 64% fear and 17% anxiety and 83% tension and 94% anger, and then at different times of the day or people or whatever. But have you ever really, sat down to think about to what degree you get into fear, anxiety, tension, and anger, or any variations of these? In our culture, and of course, Western culture, people know, especially in the United States, that, my gosh, we really, as a whole, society is, and I mean this in just a direct way, is very sick. And what I mean by that is I don't mean by demented, twisted and stuff like that. Because, I mean, all over the world, I mean, the USA, I mean, and all over the world, people are people. And for the most part, people are good people. But I mean, if you look at the health of Americans, I mean, I think something like 80% of Americans are overweight. And of course, I have listeners all over the world, and it's not just the United States. But you look at the health in first world countries, and most of them. Now, where I was going here is that I don't know what percentage or what amount of people would know, but it's been determined medically so that 90% of all illness is stress related. Now, you might know that, but have you ever, stopped to think, well, okay, 90% of all illness is stress related. How much stress do I get into? And then what is stress? And then the purpose of this podcast is how much stress does fear cause you? How much anxiety how much does that stress you? Let me back up here and say it a different way. How much does fear stress you out? How much does anxiety stress you out? Tension, it's just pure stress. When you look at tension, that's what it is. It's stress. And then anger. Look at how stressed you get when you get angry at people. So then I go back to 90% of all illness is stress related. And that goes back to what we're talking to, the fear, anxiety, tension, and anger. So these are things that you really, really want to just stop and look at in your own life. Okay, so as I said a couple of minutes ago, how do you tackle this? I mean, these are 4 really big things that consume a lot of people's lives. And what I thought I would do is just go over each one very briefly and then obviously wrap up the episode, but just go over one, each and every one of these just a bit. So fear, which I've covered before, and I've done podcasts, I think a couple of episodes in various ways on fear. And we have biological fears and we have psychological fears. The biological fears are physical survival. Somebody's breaking into your house, you're in a car accident, you're chased by an animal, you're in some kind of physical danger. And then the psychological fear is obviously you're afraid of things, which you can also be afraid of the biological fears. Psychological fears can also apply to health and, pretty much anything in your life. But I want to touch on 2 that I've touched on before. The 2 biggest, for the most part, psychological fears that people get into, providing we're well and we're surviving and our survival is not threatened and it's not fight or flight, is the fear of abandonment and the fear of inadequacy. Meaning either people are going to reject me and they're not going to like me, or I'm not good enough. And I would love, what we love as human beings, and I've been there before, I'm not there at a point in my life now, but I've been there before, is we want explanations. We want big answers. We want comprehensive answers. And we want everything to, air quote, make sense to us. And I can do that and would be wasting a lot of time because I want to just go back to and keep this simple, or go to a place and keep this simple, is that I'm struggling through this a little bit, thinking about putting my thoughts together here. What I want to say is, and to be truthful with you, one of my dogs is here scratching like crazy, and now she wants out of the room, which she's going to have to wait. And I thought maybe as I'm recording this, she's over here making noise. So anyway, back to what I'm talking about. Simplicity. I mentioned the word simplicity. I'm thinking, you know what? I can even create a podcast episode on that. But simplicity, let's go back to, what I was, the conversational loop I was opening is about the 2 biggest fears of abandonment and inadequacy, meaning that people are going to reject us or we're not going to be good enough. Now, the simplicity part that I was going to is many years ago. And I don't know why this stuck in my mind, but it did. It was just one of those imprints, something that I was in the moment, I absorbed it, and it changed my life. I was listening to my brother-in-law, and he was talking about who likes this and who doesn't. And he simply said, who cares? And for some reason that hit me when you think about it. I mean, who cares? What does it really matter if people like you or they don't like you or you're good enough or they think you're good enough or you don't? It doesn't matter. So I look at that, and I look at that also where I want to go to a degree with each of these categories is notice that when it comes to abandonment and people liking us, or are we good enough, many times we're trying to do things to control our environments and to control people into liking us or perceiving us as being good enough. And then what it comes down to, which is the whole point of this section and all of them really, if you tell me that doesn't apply to you, for the most part, for most of us, and these are lessons I've learned, and back to my brother-in-law who cares, and I've learned to let it go. But for many years that controlled me, as I wanted to make sure people thought this about me, or positive things, or my content was this, or my content was that, or whatever. That's control. It's a control issue. So a question that I have for you, and it's one that I really want you to dig into, is what can you really control in life? Think about that. What can you really control in life? And you know what? If you accept the obvious and you look right in front of you, you can't control anything. And people will even say, and I've done episodes on this. People will say, well, you can control your thinking. No, you can't. Because if you could, you wouldn't have thoughts that you didn't want to have. You simply choose your thinking. And I know you've heard me say before, and you know what? Because there's so many episodes, people forget things, is control is an illusion. And when we try to control things, we are then controlled by the illusion of control. And that pertains to what I want to talk about next, which is anxiety. And anxiety, there's when I say there's two kinds, I mean there can be many, psychological, etc. But I look at what I'm looking at, for the point of our conversation, is psychological anxiety and brain-based anxiety. Now, mind you, when I say brain-based, I mean chemical. And by the way, this all comes from the unconscious mind, because many, many years ago, probably, I guess about 30 years ago out of college, I had clinical depression and anxiety coupled with panic attacks. I mean, oh boy, think about that. Clinical depression, or what seemed like clinical depression to me at the time. I mean, it was bad, coupled or tied to anxiety and panic attacks. And I would get anxious about having panic attacks, and then I'd have panic attacks, and then go into, if I had lunch recently, throwing up and everything. So, and it's been 30 years, and trust me, I've been there. And what I recognized in that scenario many years ago, as I was coming out of it, is it was all involuntary, and it was all unconsciously created. And so the two kinds of anxiety that I want to touch upon here are the biological, the chemical imbalance. And I was really poor out of college. I'm not the person I am now. I worked in a t-shirt shop on the beach. The Texas economy was depressed. I was a victim of mass thinking, oh, the Texas economy is depressed. I can't get a job. I've got a good college degree, a couple of them from a great school. I don't have any money, blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't afford therapy. I couldn't afford, and where I lived also, there really weren't any therapists. It was a remote little beach town. But I got over it, and I recognized as I was getting over it or getting through it, that it was all subconsciously harbored and driven. And by the way, I didn't mean for the podcast to go here, so hopefully I won't go too far, until I confronted and dealt with my inner demons, and I'm just choosing that word demons, just colloquially, until I dealt with that, the clinical depression did not go away. And when I did deal with it, it air quote miraculously went away very, very quickly. And then the other anxiety is basically general anxiety. You're anxious about a test, or anxious about doing a presentation in front of people, or you've got to deliver, something somewhere, or whatever. You know what I mean, right? When I talk about just general anxiety. So what I want to, looking at anxiety, what I want to look at is notice again, unless it's the biological, notice the other anxiety. You're trying to control something. You're trying to control an outcome. You're trying to, in some way, influence something in your environment, because if you weren't, you would not have the anxiety. So again, what can you control? Okay, let me segue from the podcast for just 1 minute. The fact that you're here listening to my podcast means that you're serious about transforming your life from the inside out. Now, that being said, you're going to want to mark your calendar, because I'm doing a live no-charge training starting on March the 4th. It's a 3-part transformational training, and it's called the Be, Do, Have series. And what we're going to do is we're going to dig deeper into the ways of identity that you need to be, so that you can actually change the things you need to change, so that you can have the health and the wealth and the success and the money and all the things that you want. So whatever you do, mark your calendar for March the 4th, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, and visit jimfortin.com/be2have. And again, whatever you do right now, get registered for this no-charge training. Okay, back to the episode. Okay, the next one, we'll keep it pretty simple, but tension. Now, when I looked up tension a couple of days ago, I'm like, well, how is, tension defined? It's the act or process of straightening something tight. The condition of so being stretched, tautness. A force tending to stretch or elongate something. A measure of such a force. And it can also be nervous tension and nervous strain. And if you look at that, you think about what causes tension in your life. And I think about me, because we're all the same. I rarely have tension anymore. And oh my gosh, I had tension for many, many years. And tension for me was always about, again, I've got to look good or not look bad, or I've got to control something. So think about that for a moment. And think about where tension shows up in your life. And then again, obviously the whole point here is that tension can lead to stress, and stress can lead to illness. But where does tension show up in your life? And I know that you're thinking through this and you're listening to me. You're going through your mind and doing a little checklist and going, well, yep, nope, yep, okay, there, not there. And something popped into my mind. Was what a great source of tension is for a lot of people is children. And I started thinking also, do you recognize that many times, because I don't have kids, but I've watched, all my friends have kids, and I'm 55, and we're around kids. And the greatest source of tension around parenting is that the parent cannot control the child. Or the child is not doing what, the parent wants the child to do. And then that creates a great deal of tension. Now, trust me when I tell you, I'm not qualified to talk about parenting. That's why I don't. Unless you're a parent, you probably don't know jack about it. And I was going to say, I was going to make some comments about different people who counsel people on things and they have no experience with it, but I'll leave that alone for now. But tension in your life, look at that. And look at what causes tension for you. Simple things. What used to cause tension for me was if I was late. If I'd get caught in traffic, that would cause tension. Why? Because then I would be late. And now I look back, in retrospect, and I'm like, well, what would happen if I was late? Well, people are going to think certain things about me if I'm late, and they're going to say this about me, and I'm not dependable, which is a value of mine unconsciously. So notice again, all I wanted you to notice here, and you know what? I know I'm going all over the place in this podcast. Like I said, how do you tie this together? I'm just giving you food for thought because I want to tie it up with one thought at the end. and tie all of this into one thing for you. But tension, look at the things in your life that cause you tension. And a couple of things, just toss a few more things here out, is tension also is caused by an uncertain outcome, meaning I don't know what's going to happen. And because I don't know what's going to happen, then you know what? That can put me into anxiety, which could be tension or create tension or be similar to tension. That could put me into fear, which I could get tense about also. And notice how these are all kind of related. But to give you a great example, movies. Tension is what makes movies really exciting, especially like scary movies. If you look at Jaws, for example, the movie back in the 70s, and I'm sure everybody's seen it. For the most part, everyone's seen it. And if you look at what causes attention, it's that you never know where Jaws is going to be in the first part, first half of the movie. You don't know where Jaws is going to pop up. And that's what creates the tension. And when I recognized that many years ago, I recognized that tension is also caused by this one thing. We don't know what's going to happen. And when we don't know what's going to happen, guess what? We get tense. Now, something else I want to point out there, notice it's a control issue because you're trying to control something before it happens, or you're wanting to control it so it comes out in a particular way that you want it to come out. And again, it's a control issue to some degree. Okay, so a biggie for a lot of people is anger. And what I've noticed over the years as well, myself included, is I would think back to what made me angry. And I look at people all day long. What makes people angry? I mean, what makes people... I'm just laughing because these aren't things I get into at this point in my life. But I've been there. And I'm thinking right now, what's popping into my mind is people getting mad in traffic. And I'm thinking back, I don't know if you ever read years ago, maybe 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago, Jack Nicholson, the actor, he got out of his car, I think, and started beating somebody's car with a golf club. And I'm like, how ridiculous is that? And that's anger. And what caused that? What caused it was basically the driver of the other car did something he didn't like. He couldn't control the behavior of the other driver. Therefore, he got into anger. So anger, look at your own life, is something outside of your control. Think about that. Now, think about 3 things that make you angry. Okay? 3 things. And then notice and ask yourself how much control is tied to that. If for example, let's say your mother, and these are all just because they're just everyday examples. Your mother starts talking about XYZ and it makes you angry. And when I say your mother, let me contextualize that. You're an adult and your mother starts lecturing you on this, that, or the other. And you get angry. Why? Because you can't control what your mother's saying. You can't shut her up or she won't stop. So if you look at your life and you look at all the things that make you angry, your husband leaving his dirty socks on the floor. I don't know, your wife leaving her dirty socks on the floor, or your wife leaving her makeup all over the bathroom counter, or this day and age, your husband leaving his makeup all over the bathroom counter. But you know what I mean, right? And I heard something many years ago also, is that there's no such thing as anger. And when you're feeling anger, really what you're feeling is you're feeling fear or hurt or frustration. And notice those, for the most part, again, are all about somebody else and trying to control them. So, and I can go deeper here. Again, I can't, rabbit trail too much, and this would be a 4-hour episode if I did, but if I dug in further to anger. But what I want you to take away here is this, is notice for the most part, when you're angry at someone, it's because you're wanting them to do something in a way that you want them to do it, and they're not doing it. Let me give you a tidbit here also, a way to diffuse somebody if they're angry at you. As a matter of fact, every one of you go try, make a note of this, go try it today, tomorrow, because there'll be some time in your life within a day or so you can use this. If somebody's angry at you, you can simply say a simple phrase. You can say, "What is it that you want from me?" And you'll notice right away the person for the most part will calm down. And if you notice also, they will tell you something they're not getting from you, and that is making them angry. And that's why I said, for example, there's no such thing as anger. It's simply that the person is feeling hurt because they didn't get something. They're fearful because they're not getting something in a relationship. They're not getting the attention they need or whatever it might be, or they're frustrated because they're not getting something. Now, back to kind of the core of what we're talking about. How much control is wrapped around anger? And then obviously what we're talking about is eliminating and letting go of the anger in your life and the tension in your life and the anxiety in your life and the fear. And those are all control issues. And as I said earlier, you can't control anything. Think about that. You can't control anything. And I've never really been one to be a control freak. No one's really ever called me a control freak. And I've noticed that I've never really tried to control people's behavior. Another aspect of control is trying to control my own behavior. If I didn't do something in a certain way, it would make me angry for the most part. That was years gone by as well, because I have mellowed out the last several years of my life. So just notice also, where does the anger come in? Does it come in at yourself? Does it come in, towards other people? And then ask yourself, what am I trying to control? So we've talked about the concepts, obviously, of fear and anger and frustration and anxiety. And where do we go with that? I mean, how can I make this tangible for you so that you have a takeaway? When I started this episode, I said that we all want, tangible plans. And by the way, that's partly the way the brain works. Give me 3 steps and give me 3 ways, etc., is what a lot of us want. And I'm going to give you my thoughts on this. And the reality is we can spend a lifetime mastering it, and we can take forever to master it, or we can master it quicker in life. It's entirely up to us. But when you look at control, when you look at it, it really comes down to attachment. Is that you're attached to something. You're attached to looking a certain way, feeling a certain way, people perceiving you in a certain way, things happening in a certain way, getting things in life in a certain way, and life being a certain way. And what I want to point out is that's attachment. Now, when I talked about easy, we want easy, like, it's an easy answer, right? It's attachment. But yet, what the heck do I do with that, right? And that's to surrender, trust, and do not doubt and let go. I call it an STD, surrender, trust, and do not doubt. And there's actually a podcast episode on that. But let go in life. And I'm sensing as I'm saying this that I want to create more episodes around this and see if I can make them a little more tangible for you. But if I look at this myself in my own life, it's the attachment. And I remember a dream that I had. My brother-in-law teaches me shamans work. He's a sorcerer and a shaman. They work in dream time. And I learn when he's talking to me, for example, like, what I call awaking, like awake right now. If he's talking to me, he never really teaches. He does most of his work in dream time. I've done episodes on this as well, which actually you're more awake in dream time than you are right now. And you're awake right now, but you think that you think you're awake now. And then when you sleep, you think you're dreaming, but you're actually always awake. It's just a matter of awareness and your height and your level of awareness. And when I say awake, we can flip that and say you're also always dreaming. But a dream that I had one time that changed everything for me is, in the dream, he and I were talking, and he said something that I don't have the smarts to think of it in that way myself. But he said something in a way that I brought back from Dreamtime, and I'm like, yikes, that's powerful. And he said, you have to let go of your attachment to everything in your life, including your life. Think about that. You have to let go of your attachment to everything in life, including your own life. And when you look at that, everything we've talked about fits in that shell of obviously your life, right? This is your life. And think about all the things that you're attached to in your life, and all the things that you're attached to are what create the fear and the anxiety and the tension and the anger. So that comes down. That's why I was saying a little earlier, I know I'm thinking I want to create more episodes on this, is letting go of the ego, the self-importance. And that's then when we start transcending into the spiritual essence of who we are. The way we tend to live our lives is, let me live in the 3D first. Let me take care of my bills and my husband and my wife and my car and my kids and my job and my money and my launches and this and that and this and that. We tend to live in the 3D, and then we get to the Om and the meditation and the spirituality when it's air quote convenient for us. But yet we're letting, as if your hand, I've used this metaphor before, you look at your entire body, and then you look at after the last little joint in your pinky. Well, what we generally do is let that last little joint, which is our ego, control the rest of us. The smallest part of us controls the biggest part of us, which is our cosmic divineness, our essence, our spirituality. And basically, we give all of ourselves away to that one little bitty piece of us, which is the smallest piece of who we are. And when we step into the spiritual essence of who we are and that divineness, this is a leap you have to make on your own. I can't do it for you, and I don't even know that I can lead you there. But it's like hopping into a pool, a swimming pool. You don't know what the temperature's like till you hop into it. And the same thing about shedding this humanness, all these things, and the ego and the arrogance and all these kind of things that we have. When we shed those things, it's like hopping in the pool of water. And there's a warm pool of water that we can be in, like a huge pool, like an ocean, which is the divineness of who we are. And once we start swimming in that, that's when the fear in life, because think about all the fears and anxieties and tensions and angers. Think about how those things would automatically dissolve if you stepped out of your self-importance and you stepped out of your ego and you stepped out of your attachment. How much easier life gets. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this episode up. So your takeaway this week is, again, let go of attachment, your transformational takeaway, and ask yourself what you're attached to. And I'm grinning because I said I'm going to wrap this up because I probably mangled this episode. And that's okay too, because guess what? I'm not attached to the outcome. I mean, somebody could listen and say, well, that's crap what you did. But you know what? I did it because that's what I do when I put these out. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. And I'm thinking now I want to do some more episodes on this, and I'll catch you on the next episode. What I do want to say before we go here is thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you with immense gratitude for the amount of downloads we've had. I mean, we're going on millions of downloads, or we're heading that way. For the people that have been very loyal, that listen, that share the podcast. And for you, I have immense gratitude for allowing me to do what I'm on the planet to do. And thank you for allowing me to serve. Okay, make it a great day today, and I'll catch you over on the next episode. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with your friends and family. You know, if you found value, they will too. so please share via your social media channels. Also, if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions to support@jimfortin.com, and I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. Also, if you want transformational content like this daily, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram name is I am Jim Fortin. Finally, I do have a personal request. I believe that we're all here to help others and to grow and evolve ourselves. Together, you and I, let's help more people. If you would please leave a review on iTunes, and a good one, by the way. I'd be grateful, and through your assistance together, we can transform more lives. Thanks for listening.